Obviously, since this is a mental health podcast, there are some disclaimers I have to go through. First of all, I am not a medical professional. I am just a girl with a passion and years of experience and a psych degree. So please take what you want, leave the rest, and speak with a medical professional if you do need medical advice. Also, this is a very real podcast. It will be uncensored. I will try and bleep out some cuss words, but I cannot guarantee that all will be. With that, if you have any little ears around, please be cognizant. And also, I will be speaking on some pretty sensitive topics. So please listen only when and if it feels right for you. Finally, I do have the mental health hotline. If you need to speak with anyone, they are around 24/7, and their number is 844-685-7030. I used to work for them. They're super helpful. Please give them a call. I feel like I always slide into this thing like a roller coaster so I don't hit the mic. Squish between the couch and mic. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Be Well with Alex. I want to take a moment and just talk and get comfortable in front of the camera because I tried recording yesterday and it was just a hot mess. I was so in my head. I think recently I have felt the need to become a perfectionist again, just out of some stress going on in my life. Whenever my life feels very out of control in one area, I cling to control in another area. So even yesterday, I started spiraling, and I'm so thankful for Austin. He came in and he gave me a big hug, and he's like, "You enjoy this. This is your time. Just take the time, talk as you would, like you're talking with a friend, like you're talking with me. You got this." That didn't help. Then I ended up going to walk. I have a walking pad that I use that hold myself accountable on because I can't be walking too much. But during the day, I like to use it once or twice as I'm getting my focus work done. Surprisingly, the constant movement helps me stay focused. I went to get on it. Now, here's my first mistake. If you ever get a treadmill of any kind, or even if you're stepping on one in the gym, I'm sure they're a little more safer, but here's my piece of advice. Start the treadmill before you get on, or put your feet on the sides of it, not on the belt. Because here's what happened to me. I was standing there. I opened my laptop. I went to start the treadmill. I was standing on the belt. It malfunctioned. It started speeding backwards as fast as possible. I fell. I grabbed the table, pulled it down on top of me because it's not attached to the wall. It's not very heavy. And I had my foot against the wall trying to stop myself, and my whole back got skinned. So this is very uncomfortable sitting right now, all the way up my tailbone to my midsection of my back. And it wouldn't stop with the remote. So I'm screaming for Austin to help me, and he's in the garage. Luckily, he heard me. He rushes in. He pulls out the plug, and we're just in shock. So that happened, and that was traumatic, and I learned my lesson from that. That was my day yesterday. And it sums up my whole week because my week has been just as chaotic. With that, let's get into it, shall we? The theme of today is advocating for oneself. This is extremely hard for anyone. I thought it was just me, but I ended up Googling it and I saw it's not just me. This is a universal phenomena due to many factors that we will get into. But first, you know what time it is. If you could please take a moment and follow if you have not already. Share with a friend if you have already followed. Leave a review, comment, whatever you feel like today. I will let you in on another funny story. If you are a regular watcher of Be Well with Alex and you listen to my social media episode, we talk a lot about how social media does a very good job at keeping us coming back for more by making us feel like shit about ourselves. And that's what happened to me when I went on Spotify Creators to upload my last episode. Spotify gave me a notification that I should have 275 followers by now. I am nowhere near that. That is keeping me coming back for more. I don't necessarily need that right now, but I do really want to grow this community and hopefully have a positive impact on as many people as possible. So that's what I'm aiming for. I would really appreciate it. But of course, you owe me nothing. With that, let's get on with the episode. My mangoes and lemons, they are tied into this topic. I can't go too much into detail because they have to do with certain situations I'm going through at my job. And as many of you know about me, I try very hard to keep my professional life and my personal life separate. Is that always realistic? No, we don't operate in a silo. When something impacts our professional life, it does also bleed into our personal life. You can't help that. But for the purposes of my privacy, for the purposes of the place where I work, I'm going to keep details to a minimum this episode. Starting with my lemon, I have had some very hard conversations in the past couple weeks, and it's also just been a hard past couple weeks for me in general. For one, my grandfather's health has significantly declined, and he did end up passing away. We have seen this coming for a couple months now, and I wasn't super close with him, but I don't think I realized how much of an impact it still would have on my mentality, and I am sad. I really am. I don't think I realized that until a couple days ago when everything just hit me at once, and I realized I'm sad about a lot of things right now, but that also is weighing very heavily on me. So there's that. Then at work, in gist, there were some things that I negotiated when I was hired on that have since changed, and I've had to undergo some renegotiations, and that has not been easy. And this ties into hand with advocating for myself. There are many different reasons why it's hard to advocate for yourself. In this moment, I even wrote in one of the emails that I exchanged back and forth with one of my bosses, I wrote I was trying really hard not to be difficult. I do feel like a burden on people a lot of the times, and I hate feeling that way. It is one of the worst feelings, and I think that is a human phenomena, but that is something I personally really struggle with. I never want to feel like I'm too much for someone, that I'm overbearing, that I'm causing them more complications. I like to be the girl where it's easy to interact with her. She doesn't cause any issues, right? Unfortunately, that's not the way the world works. And we're going to get into all of this. I needed to negotiate these things for my well-being at the end of the day, even though it was very, very, very difficult to even attempt that or decide that that is what I needed for myself. I ended up going the logistical route first because I never want to be the girl who cries mental health or cries medical, even though these things do have to do with mental health or medical. I just never want that to feel like it's inhibiting me at all. But the reality is I'm really not that long into recovery. I'm not far. I recovered from the eating disorder, and I use that loosely because there are still things I'm working on, for a year, and now I am in my first year of quote full end quote recovery. There are still things I'm struggling with. There are still weird, wacky hormonal imbalances going on some days. There are still days where it's really hard for me to get out of bed. There are still days where my brain fog, I mean, that's nearly every day, is still there, and it's clearing up, but it's just hard. It's just still hard. And speaking with my team, here where I say team, I mean my medical team. All right, continue. And letting them know everything that was going on. They didn't want me disrupting any form of my routine, which this was going to start disrupting my routine while I'm just now learning stability again. They don't want anything to rock my world potentially, and this has rocked my world. It might not seem like a big thing to the average person, but for someone in my situation, it is a big thing. I don't know if that made any sense without giving a lot of context, but hopefully you can think of a similar situation and understand where I'm coming from. That was my lemon. My mango is that I went to visit my team in Houston last week, which is always fun. It's stressful, very stressful, but it's also very fun. I was able to eat the entire time, which made me very happy. There was even one point in early recovery where, again, I was in constant communication with my team, and they didn't want me work traveling at all. I was able to show them that it was hard, but I got through it, and I probably shouldn't have been traveling at that time just because of how strict my eating schedule was, but my eating schedule has mellowed out a lot. When I was in early recovery, I was eating over 6 times a day, and it was like boom, boom, boom. Now I'm eating around 4 times a day, and I do have some time in between. What I do is I align them with my admin time, my power hours, as I call them. There's a whole theory on Power Hour, if you want to look it up, that I can talk about in a later episode. I learned that through a past recruiting job that I had. It's basically 4 hours of just straight focus time that you have during the day, and then the rest of the time you let distractions come in. I never go on full do not disturb during those times just because of the industry I work in. I have to be available for people. That's just the way the cookie crumbles. But I do try and make that time my work time and also my eating time. That's normally how I structure my days. When I'm in Houston, it's very hard to do that though, because it's back-to-back meetings. I'm around people and I still have a big fear of eating around people because of all the comments that I got while I was in the eating disorder when I was trying to refeed. I still have a lot of fear around that. And being around people all day, every day is still exhausting to me. I hope that goes back to normal eventually, but that's just still a place that I'm at. Yeah, I was able to get my 4 big meals in, which was good, even if I just had to step away and grab a snack real quick and then come back. My other mango was that I got to see my safe friend. What I mean by that is I have a series of friends who they're just really easy to hang out with. Whenever I get together like them with them, it doesn't feel like a chore. It feels like something I am genuinely excited for. Whereas I can't say that about every social situation that I'm in. For instance, after working all day with people in the office in Houston, I'm talking it's like fast paced. There's so much going on. You do not get a moment to breathe. Then I get off work and I just want to relax. But this type of friend, my safe friend, is the type of girl who I do feel relaxed when I'm with her. I can just go to the hotel, change into a hoodie, and we can just go get food or drinks or appetizers or whatever we want to do. And it's so nice and relaxing. I just love it. So that was fun. She's also my coworker. I don't think I mentioned that. She's my coworker slash friend. My other mango, I guess I have a lot of mangoes this week. Last week I was like, I have so many lemons. And this week I'm like, I have so many mangoes. My other mango is that she has a very exciting announcement on the way, which I also don't think I can share publicly yet, but I am very excited for her. And I will share more as I am able to. Very mysterious today, right? Let's dive into the episode, shall we? As I was sat terrified writing some of these emails to my boss to renegotiate, I was thinking about all of the other times when I advocated for myself and it did pay off, along with all the times where I didn't and I really should have. I used to be a chronic people pleaser, which you hear a lot about people who struggle with eating disorders. I was scared to piss people off at my own expense. For example, in high school, I said yes to absolutely everything. I had the worst fear of missing out or FOMO, so I said yes to all the social events. On top of that, I had a very rigorous cross-country schedule. I was showing up to practice at 5 in the morning, running till 7, going straight to school, doing school from 7 to 2, I think it was. Getting off, I had an hour for most people to relax. For me, I was doing clubs, I was in student government, I did yearbook. Then I would go straight into my evening practice from 3 to 5. I would get home, I would do my homework. Maybe again, I would go to a Bible study or something that night, and I wouldn't go to bed until like midnight. What fell to the wayside there was my sleep and my eating. I definitely did not eat as much as I should have back then either. I didn't realize this until later with all the therapy through the eating disorder. I also did not sleep as much as I should have because I don't know how I survived 4+ years getting 5 hours of sleep every night. I could never do that now. If I don't get 8 hours of sleep, you're going to hear from me. But that's the way that it was back then for me. These days, I definitely prioritize my health more and realize that I can say no to things. But back then, I really didn't. It wasn't that I didn't say no for myself. It's that I didn't say no because I didn't want to piss other people off, or I didn't want other people to have animosity towards me, which is so crazy to think about because if I say no to going to a girls' night, whatever, I'll just go to the next girls' night. People don't care about that type of thing these days anymore. But if you go back to my episode on ADHD masking, if you listen to that, I think part of it was I was trying so hard to get people to like me and make close friends that I thought the way to do that was to say yes to everything and just always be there for them. And then I wasn't showing up for myself at the end of the day. Getting to college, I did grow out of that. But then I ran into some very unhealthy habits around advocating for myself around men. First, there was a guy that I had a crush on in high school who ended up being single while I was in college. In high school, he had been a couple years older than me, so we really didn't cross paths. But I saw him on a dating app in college, and I swiped, and he swiped on me also. I remember that day, and I was just beaming. I was like, ooh, okay, the senior boy while I was a sophomore thinks I'm cute, and we can date now. We were doing the whole cutesy messaging thing back and forth. But every time that I would try to plan a date with him, he just kept blowing me off. He had partied too hard the night before. He hadn't studied for an exam. He was hungover again. And after a while, I got tired of it. I didn't want to piss him off because, again, this had been my crush. I idolized him in high school. I thought he was untouchable. And now he might be interested in me. At first, I just kept entertaining it much longer than I really should have. But eventually, I told him I was over it. I didn't even want a boyfriend who I had to worry about clubbing every night anyways. I mean, yeah, it's college. Let's go party. But if you're always texting me that you're hungover, I don't want to have to worry about you and what you're doing every night. If you're out with other girls, I can be trusting to an extent, right? I was just worried about how his habits would impact any form of relationship that we could potentially start. I did cut it off. And my worst fears came true. He was very mad at me and had some choice words. But then I realized later on in life, I dodged a bullet around that. Even later on in life, I really realized I dodged a bullet on that because let's just say he has some not so great charges against him for some not so great things. Maybe I'm not the first to judge because if you listen to my story, you know, I had an incident as well. But let's just say there's a pattern there. And I'm glad that I did not end up dating him. Moving on. There was another instance, and this might have been the scariest in my life, where we had different date functions that you could go on. I was a part of a sorority, and at the time I wasn't dating anyone, so I was mainly just bringing frat guys to these events. My friend had this guy that I thought was cute. He's also my math class. I remember seeing him, and I was like, okay, he's kind of cute. Maybe I'll sneak a seat next to him. She knew him. And I had told her about him, and she set me up with him for a date function. Should have done my research first. She didn't really know him. I didn't really know him. Things got ugly. We got to this date function, and he was just so sloppy. He was stumbling over himself. Even before the function started, he showed up drunk. That was my first red flag, but I just kept going with it. Then he's tried to fight all these guys while we were at the function, and we ended up getting kicked out. And I was over him at this point. So I just ordered him an Uber and I tried to get him in the Uber because he was sprawled out on the curb. He was so drunk. And I finally get him in the Uber and he tries to grab me and pull me in the Uber. And the Uber driver's yelling at him. My girlfriends are yelling at him and pulling me away. And he's like, no, you're coming home with me. What's going on? What's happening? I thought we were vibing. Like all these things. I was like, no, I'm not going home with you. You're too drunk. Go home. At the time, I was a resident assistant. I worked and lived on campus. I ended up getting myself a separate Uber back to my dorm. When I got there, I went up to go to my room. He was waiting on my floor for me. I don't know how he got in the building. He must have followed another student in. Hindsight 2020 on my part, I should have never told him what dorm I worked in, but he had asked, what do you do? I'm an RA. What dorm? I told him. He ended up finding my room because every floor they have your name, like the leader RA of that floor, plastered on the wall. It wasn't that hard to find what floor I was on. He got up there. He was waiting for me. I immediately go to turn the other direction, but it's too late at that point. He ends up cornering me in the hallway. I'm terrified for my life. He's screaming in my face, like this close from me, saying how I'm such a how I led him on, how I'm such a tease, how I'm not going to get away with this, like all these crazy things. And I was terrified. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know he was going to pull me in my room and rape me. I had no idea. It's hard because it was a Saturday night. Like all my residents were out, or maybe they just didn't really think much of it because kids yell in the hallway all the time. I don't know. I got so lucky, y'all. Another RA was making the rounds, and each RA, when they have their nights off, other RAs cover their floor for them. So as my night off, he was covering my floor for me. He happened to get up there probably because he heard the screaming. If you knew him on a day-to-day basis, he is the sweetest guy you will ever meet. He's gay. He is the epitome of the gays. He is just so funny. Very high-pitched voice. Wouldn't normally hurt a fly. Seems very unintimidating, but he was still a big fella. Wow, do personalities change when you need them to? All of a sudden, I see him, but his voice does not match what it normally matches. I hear the most deepest, manliest voice of my life belting at this guy. Get your hands off or get out of the building. I just called FSU PD. They're going to be here in 2 minutes. Blah, 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 blah. We both were shocked. I was trying not to laugh because, again, this is totally anti him, anti his personality. I'm like, who is this guy? The other guy, finally, he backs away, tries to fight my RA friend, and my RA friend was not going to fight him. He was too drunk to fight anyways. We ended up just carrying him out of the dorm, and then by that time, FSU PD got there. I had to fill out all these incident forms. It was a whole thing. Hindsight 2020, do your research. Those two instances, I think what I'm trying to say here is I advocated for myself, but I think, one, it was far too late. I think I should have stood up for myself earlier before it even got to that point. Two, it also kind of scared me from advocating for myself again. I kind of backed away from that for a while because my fears came true. Someone did get really mad at me, and another person could have done some awful things to me. So I went back to my shell for a while and ended up being the nice, polite people pleaser again, but I was wary. I was way more wary after that. The last one I have in college and around the boy theme, my own boyfriend, which I'll pause you there, that he didn't do anything wrong, but I had a fear of saying no to sex, even with my own boyfriend, because I didn't want my own boyfriend to potentially, I always ran through the worst case scenarios, potentially cheat on me because I wasn't giving him what he wanted. I honestly thought all girls had sex every day. I'm really not a huge sexually driven person. Yeah, I don't care. I'm not. I just never have been. I definitely said yes to sex way more than I really needed to when I didn't want to. I think that's also a problem. I think that's not talked about enough. Just because someone's your significant other, you still need to give them consent every time. And you can still have boundaries with yourself around how frequently you want to have physical intercourse, even how much you want physical touch. But I think it was hard. I think I always, what's the word? I always submitted to the other person's love languages. For a lot of my boyfriends, it was physical touch, but that might just be a guy excuse. And that makes my life hard these days because I do stand up for myself now. But in the back of my mind, I always do still wonder if I'm not doing enough. That's something I've always struggled with as well. You know, the craziest thing is I know a lot of guys in their head right now are probably thinking like, oh, you just haven't had the right guy to have sex with. Off. Honestly, I'm happy right now. I'm very pleased. I'm very, very pleased. But that doesn't mean I want to do it every day. Get off your high horse. I might cut that. That might be too TMI. We'll see. Maybe I'm feeling bold today. Maybe I'm not. Enough with my backstory. Let's get into the science behind things. As you know, I like to know how things work. I don't like to just make blanket statements out there. I wanted to know this time, why is it so hard for us to advocate for ourselves? Google has some ideas for us. First and foremost, emotional and psychological barriers. Fear of rejection, conflict, and being perceived as unlikable or difficult can trigger anxiety and cause people to avoid speaking up. I already talked about this a little bit already, the fear of the conflict with the men in college, and then the fear of being difficult for the people that I work with right now. It's so funny because literally in the email to one of my bosses where I was renegotiating things, I put verbatim, I'm trying not to be difficult, and I truly meant that. I really meant that. But I'm going to start removing that from my vocabulary from here on out, along with I'm sorry, because I think those two phrases people say too often, and specifically females say too often these days as well. Let me give you an example. When I was on this work trip in Houston, I always meet great people when I'm on work trips. I love the networking aspect, even if they're people not in my field or industry. When I'm staying in some of these hotels, I meet some really cool business people, and I love striking up conversations with them. One woman I met, we were waiting in the Starbucks line together. She's a scientist. I was speaking with her and just kind of striking up conversation. Then I realized she might not be a morning person like I am. So the people pleaser in me said, I'm sorry, am I bothering you right now? And she put me in my place. She said, do not say that. Women are always apologizing too much, and it takes away our power. You talk as much as you want, and I am happy to listen to you. That threw me aback. That's why I was like, you are right. Girlfriend, you are right. I'm sorry for my vocabulary right now. I used to be really good about that, but haven't been the best recently as I've been a little self-conscious with everything. That and be difficult. I'm trying not to be difficult. That's getting removed from my vocabulary now too. I'm not being difficult. I'm just advocating for what is best for me. period. Do I still have an intense fear of rejection? I do, but I think it's gotten easier as I've gotten older because I've been forced to advocate for myself. In the past, it was more of a choice around social outings, around how much I wanted to exert myself, etc., etc. Now, a lot of it has to do with finances, living situations, medical situations, things that are more high stake that I'm forcing to speak up for myself for, or else it's going to put me in some very difficult, sticky situations. When I moved to St. Pete, I got my first apartment complex, one that I was financing completely on my own because in college, I had shared an apartment with one of my exes. And then outside of that, I was working in the dorms to make money and have cheap living expenses. I mean, you can't beat that. Having a first apartment, I didn't realize how many hidden fees or things in the fine print that I had to go through. Heck, thinking back on it, I should have just had an attorney read over it. Maybe that's me being dramatic, but if you've ever had an apartment, you know what I'm talking about. At least in these large metropolitan areas. To make matters worse, in the first apartment that I had, they had a change of management halfway through my lease, which brought forth a whole nother set of rules and financial obligations that I was not prepared for. I did end up battling a lot of those and ended up getting what I believe was a fair amount, which was still costing me organs. It was so expensive, but it was doable. It was manageable. I was able to negotiate down prices to a manageable, reasonable amount, but they were trying to throw hidden fees at me left and right for the stupidest things ever. Things I wouldn't have even thought of. They were like, it's in the fine print. And I'm like, this is not what that says. Like, you're pulling a fast one over me if you think that this is that. I'm trying to think of an actual example. Oh, the new management came in and they like made us pay for a trash service, but all the trash people did was take our trash can down to the dumpster. And I kept saying I was going to do it on my own. And they said I had to get this. And this was not a cheap service. It was a very expensive service. It was like $100 a month just for them to take your trash. It was ridiculous. I told them I wasn't going to pay for it. And I ended up just taking out my own trash. I thought they were going to fight me on it and they didn't because they had said that everyone had to do this. Another one was, they had towed my car one time because with the new management that came in, they started requiring decals. But if you didn't pick up your decal from the front desk in the first 2 weeks, they said they were going to tow everyone's car. I never got an email on this. They said they sent out an email. I looked through all my emails and never saw one. Maybe I missed it. I don't know. My car got towed, and my argument there was, why didn't you just put the decal sticker in my mailbox or under my door or put a flyer up somewhere, anything? Because of that, because they had no notice on it anywhere, they just said that they sent out these blanket emails, which I don't even think they did. I ended up still got my car towed, but I ended up getting the payment paid for. Those were two examples. I can't even imagine what home ownership is like. Is that better, worse? I don't know. I've never owned a home, but yeah, that was my experience with apartments. Terrible. The other experiences that I had in adulthood had to do with the different medical situations that I was navigating. Recovery was a bear. The medical facility that I went into, and I want to preface this by saying that I think medical facilities are great for a lot of people. I think it was actually necessary for me in that moment because I was in such a critical state that I needed that constant medical supervision. But at the same time, I wish I had done my research more around the facility that I personally was going into because that one also had some, how do I put it, misleading content out there around what the facility would be like versus what it was. For instance, we were told before I was going into the facility that we would have individualized meal plans for all of the girls, that we got outdoor time every day, that they had a pool we could lay by, that there was a gym we could go to and we'd be able to work with trainers. All of these things that didn't really happen, that they had a salon even. They had a salon there that we could get our hair and our nails done. Not that I needed these things, but it sounded like a vacation, basically. It was not a vacation. I went. The hardest thing for me was they did not have individualized meal plans. They said that they did, but even the girls who were dairy free, they would give them dairy milk, and the girls were having a terrible time. The girls who were vegetarian, they forced them to eat meat because they said it was a part of their eating disorder. that they didn't want to eat meat. One girl did it for her religion, and they were just saying, no, it's the eating disordered voice. And she was sobbing as they were making her eat meat because there were punishments if you did not finish your plate. They didn't tell you that. They said there was going to be rewards if you did, but never punishments. The punishments were things like you wouldn't get your phone. They were things like you weren't allowed to go outside. It was not good. I'm talking these plates were big. And when I first got there, they didn't know I had gastroparesis yet. I didn't know I had gastroparesis yet. I wasn't able to finish these huge plates right away. That was actually dangerous for me at the time. What ended up happening was when I left, and I'll get into how I left in a moment, I ended up seeking out the help of a gastroenterologist, and I went on an all liquid diet for a while. And then from there, I worked my way up to solid food, and I was doing small plates of solid food, then larger plates, and we just kept growing my plate size till eventually I was doing the whole plates of food. I was eating probably like 8 times a day, and then I went down to like 6, and again, now I'm at like 4. But that's my individual recovery. As I say all the time about recovery, and then I'll get off my soapbox on that, in recovery for an eating disorder, every plan needs to be individualized in my mind. Some people might not agree with me. I mean, there is a standard way that you should do things, and I think the 3 meals, 3 snacks, that's a very good structure to hold if that's something that you're currently doing or have been looking into. I think there are a lot of things that do make sense, but there are also things that you have to account for from an individual perspective, and this place just did not do that. I understand that that might be too hard for a facility, but don't advertise that if that's not the way that you function. The other thing, they use scare tactics to get girls to eat. I was even having a really hard time finishing my water. They would only give us water at meals because they didn't want us doing this thing where we were chugging water in between meals. I think they should give us a little bit of water, but that's just me. Whenever I got to meals, I would go for the high calorie drink option first because I was actually trying to gain weight there. And also, we had to finish our whole plate or else we get punished for it. So I really wasn't drinking enough water. One way that they were trying to get me to drink more water, because I ended up being really dehydrated from all the sugary drinks and no water during the day, my dietitian thought it was a good idea to have me go to her office and line up against the wall and chug this entire 12-ounce glass of water, which might be easy to some people, but for me, after a large meal, it makes me sound like I want to, and I didn't want to, that wasn't my type of eating disorder. So that gave me PTSD back from when I was in college and I was getting hazed and girls were shoving alcohol down my throat. I told her I didn't want to do it, and she told me I wasn't allowed to leave her room until I chugged the entire thing of water. She would yell in my face if I wasn't doing it, which again made it feel more like college when the girls were yelling in my face when I didn't want to chug the alcohol. So that whole experience was terrible. I know I went down a rabbit hole with that. Where I'm going with this is I was forced to advocate for myself in that position because I was not staying in that environment. It was making my eating disorder worse, not better. I ended up losing weight in that facility just because of how stressed I was, how little I was eating because my stomach couldn't hold a whole lot in that moment. They weren't slowly helping me into it. They were just pushing me right off the deep end, which was not going to work for my situation. I had to get out, and they made it extremely difficult to get out. So difficult. It was like a prison. If I told them that I wanted to leave, it was classified as leaving against medical advice. AMA, going AMA. And if you went AMA or even mentioned going AMA, you had a blackout period. They would shut your phone off for 3 days. And at the end of those 3 days, they would leave you on the side of the street with your luggage and your phone. You could call someone then because they wanted you to stay so bad. But if you're adamant, they would give you the forms. They would just kick you to the side of the curb with just your phone. And this facility was not in a good area. By that point, though, you're no longer their liability. So what does it matter? I had to sneak another girl's phone to call my mom to let her know that I was going to leave AMA and that I was going to be on this street corner at this time on this day. And please be there because I don't want some creepy man to pick me up. It was in the middle of I had no way of getting home or going anywhere. So in that moment, I had to advocate for myself. And that got a little messy too. Sometimes advocating for yourself is messy, but again, it's what you need to do for your well-being. What was I even talking about? Oh, why people are scared to advocate for themselves. The next is fear of consequences. There's a common fear that asserting oneself will lead to damaged relationships, negative professional repercussions, or being judged. This was also me. Damaged relationships, that was back to the sex. I worried that if I wasn't having intercourse as frequently as my partner would have liked, it would have caused a damper on our relationship. I kind of still hold that to be true, but even so, I still advocate for what my needs are physically in a relationship today. The negative professional repercussions, I mean, that's what started this whole topic in my head. I was scared. I am scared that they decide, I don't want to deal with this anymore. We already dealt with this for a year. We don't need to deal with this anymore. We don't need her. We can hire someone else. Yeah, those thoughts did cross my mind and it scared the out of me, but I thought to myself, which is more important? Is my recovery more important than my health and staying on this good path? Or is letting this new stressor, am I going to let that take me down a bad path again? And then I'm potentially back in treatment. And that is that worst case scenario. No, I can't go there again. I just can't. I can't go there again. So this was more important to me in that moment. I think that's gotten easier as I've gotten older, since I've moved past the stage of my life where I was bullied really heavily. Now in adulthood, I don't really care if people judge me as much because I realize that there's always going to happen and I'm not going to be everyone's cup of tea. I'm okay if I'm just my own shot of whiskey and whoever else wants to come sip on that, that doesn't sound right. They're more than welcome to join the party. That doesn't sound right. You get my point though. Like not everyone is going to want to stay in your life and I'm okay with that today. Does it sting a little? Sure. If someone leaves you hanging as a friend, yeah, that stings. I've had that happen a couple times recently to some very close friends of mine. Nowadays I realize it has nothing to do with me. Maybe it does a little, but it has more to do with them. Maybe it's something going on in their life and maybe they need some time apart. Maybe they just need some time to just kind of figure out their life again and then we can be friends later on. I don't know. Point being, take accountability for your actions, of course, but at the same time, I want you to know that there are always some other perceptions that people have about those around them based on their own experiences. Is all of it in your control? No, that's what I'm getting at. Another example I forgot about with fear of consequences about advocating for oneself. I forgot about this one. I think because I pushed it out of my mind and I was also so young. Back in elementary school, I was not able to advocate for myself at all. I think it was because I was scared of the negative consequences, especially as a kid. I wasn't able to think as logically as I am now. Let's go back to that time of the bullying. My parents actually named me Alexandra because it means defender of mankind. I did always go out of my way to be kind to other people and then also stick up for them when people were bullying them. But when it came to me, I didn't because I was terrified of the consequences. I learned that if I stuck up for myself with the bullying, meaning get another adult involved, as they always tell you as a kid, it would make things worse, not better. I wish it had made things better, but then the bullies would call me a snitch. I'd get beat up even more after school, and the bullying would just be 10 times worse because they wanted me to shut the up. I probably should have kept looping in an adult, but in those moments, I did start going silent and not advocating for myself because I learned, oh, trying to advocate for myself gets me more hurt. That is the connection I made in my brain. Another moment was when I was in second grade. As I told you before, I used to eat my lunch in the library. And I had this little corner of the library that I like to eat my lunch in because you weren't really supposed to have food in there. So the librarian would tuck all my sci-fi books away in that area. I could lay out my lunch, lay out my books, and just be by myself. This boy who was held back a couple times, who was a bit older than us, but he was still in our class, he found out where that spot was and he would just come torment me every day. And I was so tired of it. And then things started getting weird. And I didn't realize it at the time because I was so young, but now I realized what was happening. He would come and he would start making advances towards me, inappropriate advances. He would kiss me on the cheek and I would tell him to stop, and then he would just do it again. He kept telling me that he was going to kiss me on the lips. And again, he's a couple years older than me and I'm only 7. So these were not things that I was interested in. I did not want him touching me. I was very uncomfortable. But do you think I brought it up to an adult? Not after everything going on with the bullying. I thought it was just going to get worse. I didn't know what he was going to do or if he would even get punished. In fact, I was even scared if he did get punished. I didn't want to ruin his life and get him kicked out of school. Both of those options were scaring me. My best friend at the time found out about it because I told her, or she saw it. She saw it. She told him to get away, and then she went to our school counselor about it. And our school counselor went to the dean about it, and he ended up getting suspended. That was a good thing because I don't know where he could have gone in the future if I just kept allowing that. That's a very, very scary thought to think about. And God bless my friend was there to advocate for me when I wasn't able to advocate for myself. Again, all of these experiences have shaped me to make me stronger about standing up for myself today. But I understand, especially at such a young age, why you're scared of the consequences. You're scared about what's going to happen because those dangers are real. Next, low self-worth or undeserving feeling. Many people struggle with the belief that their needs are not as important as others or that they are unworthy of asking for what they need. Do you ever get low self-esteem being told that you have low self-esteem? Thanks, Google, for that. Definitely struggle with this. I've struggled with this my whole life. I have always had low self-esteem until possibly the last year, and even then I still have bouts of it. The funny thing is, I always tell people, own your life, tell that person no, do what you want to do, quit the job if you want to quit the job, go live your life how you want to live your life. I'm always up on that soapbox, preaching to the choir, but when it comes to my own life, as soon as it applies to me, I think, did I work hard enough to earn this? Am I valuable enough to not be replaced? Etc., etc. That's a very sad, demoralizing place to be. Even in these past couple weeks, that's what I've been thinking. Have I worked hard enough to earn the right to basic mental wellness? Have I done enough to where they won't want to replace me? I don't even know the answer to that because I'm still feeling that way today. I'm still there. I get it. I'm still there. I mean, there are moments even in my very, very secure relationship with Austin where I'm like, can he do better? I go down these dark rabbit holes to these dark places, and it's really hard not to. What are some solutions to all of this? Because I don't know about you, but I don't want to live my life in fear anymore. That is what my motto is for 2026 and just the rest of my life in general. I have spent my entire life living in fear. I don't want to live in fear anymore. I want to take back my life. Now, do I think the world should revolve around me? No, I understand there's some give and take. But at the same time, I need to be a little selfish in my life these days because I haven't been my entire life. And I've let fear run the course of my life. And now I want to run the course of my life. If the root causes are so deep, how can we start taking small steps to rewire our brains and start showing up for ourselves? I have some solutions for you. First, define your needs. Be honest with yourself about what you actually need or want before engaging and be able to differentiate between the two as well. Oftentimes, if it's a conversation or a request we aren't prepared for, we're going to react in emotion rather than logic and reason, which I will be the first to admit I definitely turn to emotion, especially with everything going on with my grandfather at the same time. My brain just went waterworks when all of this was going on at work, and that took away my power. I can't act if I'm reacting. I think that's very important to learn here too. It's okay to say, you know what, I need to step away and then we'll come back into this conversation. I need some time to mull this over. That's also advocating for yourself. And then you can come back with a more clear mindset and be able to speak on logic and reason. Kind of failed at that last week, but I was able to step away in one of my meetings and say, hey, this is a lot. Let me just take a moment and then I will come back to this. And I did. That's the key thing here too, is you need to come back to it. You can't avoid it, but it's okay to say, I need a sec. If you have a lot of time, write about it. I won't say the dreaded word journal here, but jot it down. Sometimes getting it out of your head and down on paper helps you see the bigger picture, the clearer vision. Maybe you even bring that to a trusted source, a friend or family member, a mentor or therapist, for a second opinion and outsider perspective. As I mentioned in the work example, I had to involve my medical team in this because I didn't know what to do. I knew I felt a certain type of way, but I didn't know if this was a need or was a want. And I was able to get this clarified that in this time it is a need. Maybe down the road it's a want, but right now it's a need. But Alex, what if you don't have time to truly consider? What if this is a split-second decision? Go with your gut. Reaction, not what the other person wants you to hear. Oftentimes as people pleasers, if we're afraid to make a decision on our own behalf, we just say yes. We say yes too quick and we go along with it. And then it's even harder to go back and change our minds later on because the person goes, well, you said yes. Why are you saying no now? If your gut is telling you no, but you're out of your words come yes, and you're feeling that dreaded heavy feeling, there's a reason for that. Go back and say, actually, I don't think I can commit to this at this time, but let me think about it and I'll tell you what I can commit to. Going with that gut feeling. I tell people that in recovery a lot as well. stepping back into that eating disorder realm, this has to do with food too. If you are reaching for a snack and there are so many things that you could grab and you don't know what to grab, so you're starting to back away and saying, I'm not going to grab anything, go with your gut feeling. If your gut feeling is telling you you want something sweet, start there. Even if you don't know what the object is, if you're thinking sweet, put away the salty, even though you think the salty may be the healthier or the right option. No, we're going with our gut here. We're going sweet. Then if you're looking at your pantry and you're like, Oreos, but maybe that's too much, just grab them. Grab the Oreos. That's what your gut wants. If you grab the dark chocolate instead and you're still eyeing the Oreos, like, oh, but those Oreos, that's how we're going to find food freedom. That's how we're going to recover. We're going to put the dark chocolate back. It'll still be there if we want it another time. If we actually want it, we're going to take those Oreos and that's going to be okay. It's just a snack. It's not the end of the world. We won't even think about it 2 weeks from now. Same thing with these hard, difficult situations. If you're put on the spot, first ask for more time. But then if you absolutely have to make a decision in that moment, go with what your gut is telling you, because your gut is going to lead you in the right direction. And you really do know what that feeling is. You might be like, but I'm so hard making decisions. You know what that is. You do. Next, start small. Practice asserting yourself in low stakes situations to build confidence. You don't need to march into your boss's office tomorrow and demand that raise if you're not ready for that. Maybe you start by saying no to drinks with coworkers after a long workday when you really just want to go home and chill. Do that until that no longer gives you anxiety, and then work your way up to the next level. Maybe ask the person who always takes the last cup of coffee before you and then you're stuck refilling the machine. Ask them to refill the machine so that you can have your cup of coffee since they were the last one that took it. I know that scares you. We'll get into that next. But keep doing that. Keep doing that and work your way up and up and up. And then maybe after that, you go into your boss's office, you demand a raise. I'm joking. No, go in there. You know how to do things by now. Sell yourself, explain why you deserve this. Your boss is a hard you might still not get there. Maybe you start looking for different jobs then. You get my point. In conclusion, we aren't going up to the high dive if we're not even ready for the baby jump. Point number 3, separate feelings from facts. Recognize that fear and discomfort are normal. They're not signs that you should stop. Remember, it's a universal phenomenon to feel like advocating for yourself is a challenge. Just because it feels wrong doesn't mean that it is. I always say growth and discomfort go hand in hand. You cannot have one without the other. And it's scary because you don't know how the other person is going to react. The unknown is scary for humans in general. You might be up at night tossing and turning and mulling over the worst case scenario, when in reality, the worst thing that is going to happen is that person's going to say no. I'm guilty. Both hands up, guilty as charged. I have been getting no sleep at night right now with everything going on, because I am running to worst case scenario here and there. It might not even end up that way. In fact, maybe something exciting is on the other side of that door, and that's something that I can look forward to. Maybe I'm even getting excitement mixed up with fear, because those are both very similar emotions. I don't know. But just because that feeling is there doesn't mean I should stop advocating for myself. And that's the same that goes for you as well. It'll just make you more confident as a person. A side note here that I don't think I wrote down, advocating yourself doesn't mean that you're being rude. There's a nice way that you can ask for things. No, maybe don't go into your boss's office and demand a raise. Maybe go in and explain all the hard work you've done over the years and why you think that your time is not and efforts are not being compensated fairly. There's a way to go about things. There's a way to advocate for yourself. You don't have to be mean about it, but at the same time, it is very important that we don't allow ourselves to be pushovers anymore, because then life is just going to take from you, and you're never going to feel like you actually have ownership over it. You're always going to feel out of control, and that might manifest in some very unhealthy habits. I speak from experience. Plus, guess what? Once you push past the initial discomfort and prove to yourself that the worst case scenario will not happen, that is where the growth and confidence occurs. Really like a training brain exercise. Another thing I think about, I'm tying everything into eating disorder recovery today. In recovery, what they say, do the things that scare you. If it scares you to take one more bite of steak, that's what you need to do. If it's uncomfortable to take one more sip of the soda when you're already full, feel like you've had too much sugar, whatever the case may be, take one more sip of soda. If you feel like you shouldn't be having dessert, but you're really craving vanilla ice cream, take a bite or two of vanilla ice cream, or heck, have a whole scoop. You want to keep doing the things that scare you, because once you do them and you see that nothing bad happens, that's how those neural pathways are strengthened again. And you realize, oh, food actually isn't the enemy here. I'm going to be okay. This is not going to hurt me. Same thing in this scenario. If you do the things that are uncomfortable to you again and again and again, they're going to become less scary and they're going to become easier over time. I speak from experience on that as well, although it's still hard in some instances. At least the little ones get easier. How about that? Point 4. Let us reframe selfishness. Understand that self-advocacy is not selfish. It is necessary for maintaining healthy boundaries and well-being. Would you rather stay stuck in a cycle where everyone around you is benefiting at your expense? I don't think so. If you're always late to meetings because the last person didn't refill the coffee machine when they should have, make it known to them. Say, hey, I know that we have busy schedules. I'm running around, you're running around. I just noticed that oftentimes when you take the last cup of coffee, you don't refill the pot. And I know the office, myself included, would really appreciate that if you went ahead and took care of that filter so that the next person doesn't come up and is disappointed that there's no more coffee there. And if they say, oh, I'm sorry, I just, I get too busy, I can't, say, I get it, we're all busy. Maybe leave a little bit of coffee for the next person then, and they can refill the filter. That's not being selfish. That's not being rude. That's just asking people to play their part in the office. I can already hear some of my people pleasers saying, well, it's not that big of a deal. I can refill it. I mean, it's kind of annoying, but it's not the end of the world. No, because again, if you're letting these little things get to you and bother you and you're doing them anyways, it's never going to push you to grow. And I know it might not seem like a big deal in your mind, but those little things add up. And after a while, you're going to feel like you can't speak up for yourself at all. That's not asking for special treatment. That's just caring for your time and caring for you. And I know maybe that's a minor example, and some other major examples, it might feel like you're asking for special treatment, but that's when you need to go back to defining those needs and wants and understanding, is this something that is important to me, or is this a hill that I can die on? I can't answer that question. Only you can answer that question. One last point that I want to make. I'm going to go back to the gender differences here. Men, I'm sorry. You might be tired of me talking about this. No, I said it again. I'm not sorry. Not sorry. This is the point I'm about to make, though. Women, we are notoriously harder on ourselves when it comes to this. We allow ourselves to be quiet because we've always been raised to be ladylike, to be silent, to not rock the boat. All these phrases that you hear. No. It's time for us to reclaim our place in this world. It is 2026. No more of that sit up straight. Well, maybe sit up straight, have good posture, but no more of that zip up and shut up. It is time that we stand up, say the patriarchy and all that jazz, and say what we want to say. You can say it still in a nice way, but don't feel like, oh, I'm a lady, I have to be polite, I shouldn't say anything. No, we're no longer staying silent. We are maturely and gracefully reclaiming our lives back, reclaiming our narrative. I hope this encourages you to start speaking up for yourself because you deserve it. Bottom line is, you are sat on this earth with me, with Joe Schmo, with everyone else. You deserve to take up that space. You deserve to claim a seat at the table that is life. That's everyone. That's every human being. We all have our times to give and take, but you got to find out what's important for you and when to speak up. And maybe not let the world take anymore, because that is exhausting. It's so exhausting. Let's get into some listener questions. Alex, may I ask why you're flying so often? Is this normal in your business or country? That's an interesting question. I've never been asked that before. I fly so much because I oversee over 40 offices in the Southeast. And as I've mentioned before, my entire HR team is in Texas. I am the only HR professional in Florida from my company. With that, I do travel back and forth to see my team, mainly on a quarterly basis. And I also need to do site visits so that I can have eyes on the ground on what's going on in all these other offices that I do HR operations for. That's why I fly back and forth so frequently. As I mentioned previously, I almost took a break from work travel in the beginning and early recovery. I made it work, but I do actually advise people to take a break from travel in the beginning because travel is stressful and it does make it hard to keep a consistent schedule. Weeks when I work traveled, I was not the best in early recovery. I would skip meals. It was just too hard between trying to catch flights and make meetings and make the rounds and catch up with people wherever I was. It was a lot of people facing time, and I really made that an excuse for me not to eat. It wasn't until I started advocating myself as I went through recovery later and later to even tell my boss or those that I was working with, I know we have a presentation coming up. I really need to eat. And they knew my situation. Do you mind if I take the 2:00 presentation, you take the noon presentation so that I can step away and grab lunch? The answer was never no. And if it was, I'd have to figure something else out, or I would have to explain why I'm wanting to take that time a little more in detail. But that is how I had to make that work. So, unless you're able to very strongly advocate for yourself in early recovery, and find a compromise in a way that it's not putting too much work on other people, I would advise not traveling much early on. I'm able to now because I'm able to set those boundaries, even if I have to slip away and just shove down a snack and then go back to whatever I'm doing. I'm more able to do that these days or communicate where I'm at. Hey, I'm going to go grab a snack. Hey, I'll be right back. I just Uber Eats some lunch for myself for after this presentation, et cetera, et cetera. Do I like the work travel? You didn't ask me that, but I'm just going to tell you. I do. I really like the work travel. However, I think it's about to ramp up a lot, so we'll see how I feel after that. I do travel the most of my team as well, I will say, just looking at our work travel schedules. Not that I mind it. I told them when I first came on, at the time, I was a single Pringle. Even now, I mean, Austin, he travels for work too. We're not married. We don't have kids. There's not really ties keeping me here. Do we miss each other a lot because we both travel for work? Yeah, we really don't see each other at home as much as we would like to, like we used to. But yeah, I like it. I'm a little concerned it might become a lot soon, but we'll see. We'll see, you know? I think maybe as I get older, maybe I won't like it as much, but it's new and it's exciting now, so I enjoy it. Anyways, next question. Alex, how and where do you find help to begin recovery? I love speaking on this topic. I could do a whole episode on this topic. I've mentioned before that recovery is one of the hardest things I've ever done. Starting recovery is the hardest because you don't know anything and there's many different opinions out there. There's high demand for these specialists, but there's little availability. Everything is so expensive, literally costs so much. And a lot of it is private practice. Insurance won't cover it. It's stressful. It's so stressful. It makes me mad because I know so many people, they don't seek out help because it's just too difficult. Heck, the real answer to this, if I didn't have my mom sitting at the computer doing the work for me, researching facilities, speaking with friends whose daughters have gone through this, gaining referrals, I don't think I could have done it on my own. I was so weak in my eating disorder and exhausted. I did not have the mental fortitude to be doing that because I was still working my full-time job and I would get home and I would just be depressed and so exhausted. And I was just at a very dark place. I didn't have the energy to do all this research, nor did I really want to on any of these facilities. I was lucky enough to have my mom. I would say that's where I would start. I would start with a support person. Doesn't have to be a parent. I would tell someone that this is going on. Even if you think you have no one, think outside the box. Can you tell a neighbor you're really close with? Can you tell someone at a nursing home you volunteer for? Can you tell even a trusted friend, a therapist if you do have one already, your primary care doctor, you know, anyone. You need one other person in your corner to kind of help give you that push and coax you through this and at least help you have the motivation to start because it's extremely hard on your own. So I would say number one, find a support person. Number two, I would say do your research through mainly referrals. If you know other people who have struggled with eating disorders, if you have friends whose daughters or sons have struggled with eating disorders, if there's anyone you know, I would start there, see what they did, ask if they have any referrals. Because I feel like using referrals, it's easier to get you in the door than if you just do research and you're just searching all these random doctors. What I was running into there, the barrier was they were booked for months in advance. They already had long-term clients. They weren't looking to take on new people. Most of these were private practices. It was very hard for me to get my foot in the door. So I was kind of scrambling. If you're looking for facilities, my piece of advice would be, you know, yeah, you can research those on your own, but I would say ask around also. I would say do heavy research because I did not research. And then the place I walked into was not the place that was the pretty picture they painted. So just start trial and error, cold call if you have to, different offices. It's going to be a pain in the butt, but if you just sit there and twiddle your thumbs and do nothing, it's only going to get worse. People always think, this is too much work. I don't need a treatment center. I can do it on my own. I think that's the number one thing you should not do in an eating disorder is try to do it on your own. It's too hard. You need someone. You need one other person in your corner trying to get you through. I will speak for myself, and maybe I'm tooting my own horn here. I have some damn hard mental strength these days, and I felt hopeless every day that I was in my eating disorder. I felt like I was never going to get better, and I really needed to lean on people during that time. Let me take it a little personal. How I found my care team. I went to the facility, didn't love it there, but who I did love was a doctor who had very tough love. She was a recovered anorexic and alcoholic, and she gave me a list of things that I could do getting out of the facility that were going to help me get back on track without being in a hospital setting. She was the only doctor who told me, "Alex, this is not working for you. You are regressing here. This program is not for you. You really need some specialized individual help. And if you won't go to a hospital, then you need to figure something out. But you cannot do this on your own, and this is not working for you. So we got to try something different." With that, she gave me a list of people to have on my care team if I were going to try and do things, quote, on my own, end quote, from home. Because again, I still needed that support. Not gonna lie to you, it was long to get these people together. It was expensive, but that is when I started seeing progress in my recovery. It is the best choice I ever made. The people on my individual team, and again, it might be different for you, were my primary care physician, which I had already been set up with since I was little, a psychiatrist who I had from college, and I just asked her if she could support me outside of college. My personal therapist, whom I kept, I didn't want to stop seeing him, but he wasn't necessarily on the list. My eating disorder therapist, because I needed someone specialized specifically in eating disorders. My dietitian, who also specializes in eating disorders. I found her through one of my mom's friends whose daughter worked with her, and a gastroenterologist. You don't really need that one. I had a gastroenterologist because we knew that something was wrong with my stomach. It wasn't able to tolerate large amounts of solid food, and I needed to get that checked out. So I went to them, and that's how I found out I had the gastroparesis. The other one she said was vital, and I think this works for a lot of things, even outside of alcoholism. She said a 12-step program. There are many 12-step programs you can do. There's Eating Disorder Anonymous. There is AA. All of them basically have the same premise. It's more the steps that you're going through. It kind of helps you get rid of the guilt that you feel over past traumas in your life and making amends, all those buzzwords that you hear, reclaiming your life. That's what a 12-step program does for you. There was online sessions that I did. Nowadays, I don't really feel like I'm that into the whole 12-step thing anymore. I don't think that was as strong as doing the individual eating disorder counseling, but it did help. That's something you want to add to your list too. That's how I built my team. On my website, on Be Well with Alex, I'm going to start a resources page where I have my own referrals on there and have other resources where you can look for different doctors. That's going to be going up on my website as well. Yeah, we're going to take care of that this week. So you can go there. You can DM me on Instagram if you want some of my recommendations, but that's where I would start. Thank you for your questions. If you want to ask a listener question, I answer 2 to 3 a week, although next episode I might be doing 4 or more. If you want to ask one, you can go on my Be Well with Alex website, scroll down to contact us, and then you can type your listener questions there. You can also DM me on Instagram. I am taking a break from my eating disorder recovery account for a while, just until I get my life figured out again, and then I'll be back on there. Right now, I'm focusing very heavily on the podcast, and that Instagram is B_well_pod. So if you go on B_well_pod, you can ask me a question there in my DMs as well. And then Be Well with Alex, my original account, that'll be back eventually. Remember to share with a friend or a stranger because I want to stick it to Spotify and get above 275 followers. No, I really don't give a shit about that. Really, I'm just trying to spread this message. I'm trying to touch as many people as possible, help as many people as possible. And I can talk to myself all day long, but I do want to know that my efforts are paying off and more people are hearing this. I do appreciate you for helping me out. I think that's all I have for you. Be well, everyone. Till next time.